Relations between Africa and China continue to deepen in a number of sectors, including agriculture. The third China-Africa Economic and Trade Expo is providing opportunity for the African continent to showcase agricultural products. For more on the Expo, I'm joined by Philip Myburgh, the Executive Head of China-Africa Business and Commercial Banking at Standard Bank. A very good afternoon. Thanks so much for speaking to us. Now, this partnership between Standard Bank and the ICBC has resulted in significant trade between Africa and China, particularly in the agriculture sector. Can you discuss the impact of this partnership and certainly the China-Africa Export and Trade Exhibition?
Yeah, good evening, Hugo. Thanks for having me. We've just concluded the CAET, the China-Africa Economic Trade Expo. As you say, it's an important initiative between Africa and China to really drive the new relationship in economic trade between Africa and China. It's an outcome of FOCAC, which is the cooperation agreement between Africa and China to stimulate and rebalance the trade relationship between Africa and China. It was the third edition of it that we had this year. And again, a massive success. We firmly focused our efforts on agriculture. We believe there's a big opportunity for African businesses across the continent in the agricultural sector to help promote them and help promote the fantastic products that we have in this sector to a very lucrative market in China. And this forum was a wonderful opportunity to do just that.
Philip, we understand that this has been the most successful of the three expos. Can you tell us why?
Yes, so the first one was naturally exciting, but with first ones naturally comes some growing pains. The second one was unfortunately virtual due to the challenges that COVID brought us. And the third one it was great to be back physically. It was bigger than any of the previous events that we had, a number of stands, number of attendants. I mean, to give you a number or a data point, just to give you a sense of the size, it was 100,000 square meters under roof. Wow. Of connecting Chinese importers to African exporters. We as Standard Bank had a stand showcasing products from African countries across 11 of the markets in which we operate, stretching from nuts and chilies and wines and a whole bunch of fantastic products. We had the biggest stand in the agricultural section of the expo, and it was overwhelming to see the demand for the products that we have. So all the data points, the size of the event, the number of exporters we had there, the deals that were signed, all of those are trending towards being the most successful that we've had yet.
Philip, break down for us, if you will, some of the exporters that were there in China from the African continent. Well, certainly by category, if you can.
Yeah, sure. So we focused solely our efforts this year on the agricultural sector. What we found is the mining and mineral sector, which has typically dominated the trade relationship between Africa and China, it's a mature one. The one around infrastructure is a mature one. We believe one of the key opportunities that sits in the relationship within this trade corridor is agriculture, so we focused our efforts there. And as I said, between West, East and Southern Africa, we had representations across multiple subsectors in the agricultural space. We had nuts, we had chilies, we had customers doing honey, we had some fantastic wines from South Africa and the Western Cape specifically that we had there. And of course, it wasn't just about showcasing it. We also had matchmaking events specifically catering for connecting buyers and sellers to each other, almost in a speed dating capability. So it was wonderful in the sense that it wasn't an expo or a conference that was just about talking. This was about connecting business people to each other, to sign contracts, to sign deals, to ultimately change the destinies of these businesses that were involved. Because we know that with China comes scale, and if the Chinese sign a contract, it's usually a big contract, and it changes the destiny of many of these businesses.
Yeah, I can imagine. Let's talk about the value of some of the contracts that were signed. I think we understand that it's in the region of 10.3 billion, but that's obviously the global number. But let's talk about individual exporters and some of the contracts that they signed.
Yes, so it's a tough question to answer, and I'll give you the context. We're still seeing clients that took part in our very first initiative in 2019 coming back to us and saying they're now concluding on transactions of relationships that they formed 4 years ago. So the contracts that get signed almost never have an end point because there's continuous contracts being negotiated with the relationships being formed. It's been a week now since we've seen some of the contracts coming through post the event. So the number keeps changing on a daily basis. Of course, that number that you quoted is at a global level. We're currently in the tens of millions at this point in time. We're hoping that the number gets better and bigger, which I have no doubt. Sometimes business negotiations do take some time. And of course, one of the challenges that we have is the Chinese demand is so big that often the businesses that go to China to get exposed to these opportunities, their capacity is simply not big enough. So then we help, as Standard Bank Group, help these businesses collate with other businesses in the sector to be able to meet that demand. So all of that takes a bit of time for some of these negotiations to land, but all trending in a very positive direction.
Now, a lot of agriculture in the last few years certainly agricultural exports have been going to Europe and certainly to the United States. And China hasn't been as big a player, even though they are such a massive country. So let's talk about opportunities. We know that South Africa has been having some problems with the citrus exports to Spain in particular. Has this offered an opportunity or an alternative to those challenges?
Yes, spot on. So I think historically it's just been easier for many of our businesses to trade with Europe and the US and the likes. And it makes sense. There's more cultural alignment. It's easier to do business with Europe. The time zones are easier. And we just connect easier in terms of the way we do meetings, the way we engage. China, of course, is a very different kettle of fish when it comes to culture and also just the regulatory environment. But what we have found, and I think COVID has certainly played a role in it, and some of the geopolitical environments have certainly played a role in it, is that China is showing that it could be a viable alternative for many of our markets. And that's the one opportunity. Two, of course, is the fact that it is a lucrative space. And then three, you have players such as ourselves that have a very unique opportunity with the relationships that we have in China to be able to help businesses in Africa and in South Africa specifically to navigate what is quite a complex environment in China to form those relationships and do those deals. So I think businesses are starting to, many of them were aware of the opportunity, but now being able to know who to partner with to navigate some of that, I think China is becoming a real alternative to some supply chains.
Now, when you talk about China and the size of the business, I mean, you talked about $10.3 billion that we've talked about. Is it possible that this might impact food security on the African continent if farmers or those in agriculture are now looking to export as opposed to providing for the local market?
I don't think so. I think we have to stay mindful of the bigger context here. Shaping that relationship between Africa and China in the agricultural space will ultimately have a net positive effect. And the reason why I say that is it showcases the opportunity for the Chinese in the African continent. By doing this, we have the opportunity to showcase the opportunity. We attract foreign direct investment. We attract much needed skill and equipment from China into our environments, and thereby growing the commercial and industrial capacity that is so needed in the agricultural sector. At this point in time, we're not nearly enough matured to even think about meeting the demands of the Chinese environment, and bringing those environments together certainly helps mature our agricultural space. And historically, all of that has been shaped from the European and American context. The Chinese are coming in with world-class technology, often at a bit of a cheaper and more affordable rate. And all of that allows industrial capacity to happen, but also to happen in terms of an optionality and potentially at a better margin point. So I think at a net basis, certainly more positive.
Philip, have any conversations been had with the Chinese and them looking to invest in farmers or growers of various agricultural commodities here on the African continent?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is significant interest from the Chinese across Africa in investing in the agricultural space. Of course, we know that historically the relationship with China has been dominated by mining and minerals. Around that became the need for an infrastructure drive to move the commodities to China. So the Chinese are very much interested in investing in infrastructure projects in Africa. And you're seeing that relationship now transform into other sectors, whether it's ICT, whether it's healthcare, and then agriculture is certainly very much at the top end of that list. China has its own needs that they need to cater for, but there's also a lot of private businesses looking for opportunities in other markets as the Chinese economy starts to provide some challenges domestically. The Chinese do recognize that there's a lot of growth opportunity sitting in the continent. All the demographics are in our favor in the continent, so there's a lot of interest across all the subsectors of agriculture. I mean, there's not a single one that you can point towards that the Chinese are not interested into investigating as legitimate investments.
So we've talked about two benefactors, the farmers, or those in agriculture, and certainly the Chinese. Well, let's talk about Standard Bank. How important are these transactions and the growth of this market for you as a business?
Well, it comes back to our purpose, Hugo. I mean, our purpose is Africa is our home, we drive our growth. And how do you help businesses grow without helping them connect to new markets, helping them trade more efficiently, giving them opportunities where they otherwise would not have been able to. We've got this incredible network as an organization. We're the largest bank in Africa. We've crossed this massive footprint on the continent. And we've got this unique opportunity with ICBC, the biggest bank in China, being a 20% shareholder in us. It provides us this unique platform to expose our clients to. So it just makes sense for us to get involved and leverage what we have to the benefit of our clients. If our clients grow, we grow. It's as simple as that.
Well, Philip, this has been massive. Again, we'll come back to that $10 billion number. So let's talk about the next 12 months and preparation for the next Africa-China Summit. What can we look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, we're quite excited. So before we return in a year's time, we've got the Chinese International Import Expo happening in November, which is like the CAET, which we're talking about, but incorporates all geographies. It's sponsored by President Xi Jinping himself. We're very much involved in the same shape and form in that event. So our team is first and foremost planning on helping our customers get exposure into that event. And then on the back of that, we'll use that as a platform into next year's event. Every year we're going bigger and better, and we're hoping to meet our ambitions on that as well come next year this time.
Philip Myburgh is the Executive Head of the China Africa Business and Commercial Banking at Standard Bank. Appreciate your time at this